budget meetings, you're able to ask questions of the department head, whoever's in charge of that particular department, et cetera. We're going to get a presentation first, and then if you have questions or concerns, you can speak. Okay? Thank you.
So I don't have a formal
It's fine.
presentation. A lot of the analysis work that we've done historically, to be quite honest, due to other commitments that my office, I have had the last week and a half, and whatnot, we were not able to have an in-depth presentation about the overall budget. If I could do that, I'd be more than glad to put it together for another one of the hearings. It's not an excuse, we quite simply just did not have the time to do that for this meeting this year.
This is why we asked for the adjustment to the budget, for the budget hearings, was so that we could have the preparation time necessary in order to pull forward the presentation we're used to, but we weren't able to get that asked.
I know.
We asked that, we weren't able to get that, so if you want a full presentation like we've done that before, we can do it at a later date.
No, I thought that you wanted to.
I had
It's
wanted to just,
It's fine. What we can do, what I would ask is, the beginning especially, we'll talk about that because that probably has, 3 or 4 of the questions that I asked for, in my email. And just so you know, Monica, we're on just a super tight time frame, being that Thanksgiving now is, bumped up. Seriously, if you're going to get rude, if you want to leave, leave, okay? Andy.
so, not really sure where you want to start. Page 6 is the summary of the debt that's usually in there. That's a reflection of the debt that was outstanding as of October 10th. Total debt outstanding is just under 81 million, just under 71 million in the general fund. Now, I will note, that's the total balance. That does not include any grants. So when you see bond anticipation notes outstanding of 39.9 million, that's the gross. That's not net of grant reimbursements, specifically the seawall. So that number will go down as we pay down the debt associated with the grants. So it's,
You know what that
Council
is?
member, I would just ask that you go through the chair. Councilman. Go for it. Go.
All right, I got it.
Councilmember Cummings.
So specifically, this includes significant amount from the seawall. Does it also include from the water line that we'll get?
no, that has not been issued to date. So this is what's been issued, not what's been approved.
So
So that'll
Certainly
include the
there's-
seawall, the marina, the Riverfront Park North, think of all those projects that have $500 or $1 million to them.
I mean, I'm looking at the list, the first 5 have grants associated with them.
do we have a rough estimate of grant reimbursements expected?
Not with me now.
Somewhere between 15 and 30? Oh,
I wouldn't begin to speculate what that number looks like.
And you know
I
what?
mean, the seawall's 14.
14, the OCA's 500,000, South Troy roadways 80%, bike trail, we're still working on getting that closed out. So it's a big number.
Andy, you gave us at one point an awesome chart with what we've issued in terms of bans and what's closed, what's not, what's, hanging out there. Can you get us that? It's really helpful.
I can.
All right, thank you. Okay.
Next page is the traditional, how the tax rate's calculated. As I say every year, there's the overlay, that's just the assumption for, you have to account for people who don't pay their property taxes. Tax rate's $14.64, it's a 3.4% increase from 2019. Page 8 is the calculation of the garbage fee. It's $180 per unit. I'm not sure if you want to get into the garbage fund revenues tonight, or if you want to wait until November 12th and do the revenues in concert with the expenditures, similar to how water and sewer have historically been done.
Yeah, I don't mind doing it, yes. I would just ask, my biggest question on it, we're increasing the garbage fee, but yet the revenues coming in are decreasing. What was it overestimated, what?
We can go through all that. So last year, there was the $500,000 in re-levies from the 2018 fee. We had discussed it last year. I consulted with the state comptroller's office on how to handle that. There was only one way to handle it. It was to put it in the 2019 budget as re-levy revenue. And you'll see in this that there's $60,000 in re-levy revenue that's based off of the current amount that's still outstanding and kind of forecasting what could possibly be received in 2020 after the remainder of receipts this year, and also, obviously, if they haven't paid it in 2 years, if they haven't paid their property taxes, there has to be consideration of that number as well. But it's the 500,000 that we had that was how we were told to budget it last year.
Okay,
When I
so,
say last year, I mean 2019.
right, 2019, so it came in, so basically it came in less than 500K. And
Well,
so.
500 is not there, it was a one-time thing that we had to do.
But we'll be able to assess,
There was a change in accounting recognition of the garbage fee from 2018 to 2019.
okay,
2018, the revenues were recognized as they were paid. 2019, they're recognized as they're billed. That's how the water and the sewer fund is. So the 500,000 that was in the 2019 budget is what's called the cash basis of accounting. But by moving it to a new fund, we went to the full accrual method of accounting, which is the change in how you have to recognize the revenues.
So any re-levies next year will go towards the 2019 budget, not the 2020.
Correct. 2019 re-levies have already been recognized as revenue in 2019.
Even
It
though
was
they'll
a
come in
one- it was a-
2020, they'll be in our revenue for 2020, for 2019.
It's a weird.
It's a weird accounting thing that there was a lot of discussion about how to handle it.
yeah, why? Is it
It's
just,
just the way the accounting rules are.
is it because of GASB or
It's
just?
just
But
how,
it's also, if you
it's
look
just
at,
accounting, it's going from cash to GAAP. It's state accounting rules, GAAP, it's the whole gamut of things.
if you look at our 2019 and 2020 budgets, it assumes almost total payment, despite some of that will come in as a re-levy.
Right, if you don't pay your garbage fee in 2019, the general fund has to pay the garbage fund to pay it. I mean, the garbage fund, the general fund is on the hook for people who don't pay the garbage fee. And that's to make the garbage fund whole. That's why I've been saying, I had mentioned back in August when we did the presentation, the most important thing about the garbage fund at the end of the year isn't the operating statement. That is important. The most important thing is, what does the balance sheet look like? And what does the accounts receivable look like? Because it impacts cash flow in the garbage fund, and it has a significant impact on the general fund on January 1st. January 1st, general fund makes water fund whole, sewer fund whole, and garbage fund whole. It's the same methodology as the school district. You don't pay your school taxes, the City of Troy general fund pays the city school district the taxes.
Till the re-levy.
And then the general fund recoups it.
Alright,
So in addition, I do want to note though, when you talk about revenues, because we're talking about this.
Yep.
The additional revenues for the garbage fund, including the events, the commercial, the violations and the fines, those have all increased. So where you're seeing this, we've also made up a difference in the amount of bills generated to those other new revenues or additional revenues that are being put to that too.
yeah, that was one of my questions, we didn't get to that yet, but yeah, in the revenues, I noticed, I think it's $100,000 for commercial. That's the bulk. The bulk went from 1 to 2. There's a new commercial, I
Yes, there
noticed.
is.
Yeah,
And that's they'll go into that at the general services meeting. It's the fair share program. I think when you guys maybe went to the SWAT meeting, they talked about this. I know Councilman Belli has been having conversations with her. So this is the result of the fair share pricing that everybody's been talking about those businesses and residences within the city of Troy. They get multiple day pickup. This will be for them.
General fund revenues, I don't know if people have specific questions, just to kind of note on a broad basis, as has been done since the 2017 budget. Everything is based off historical trends or plans for 2020. No gimmicks, nothing that the state comptroller's office isn't a fan of. Who will be in on Monday, so everyone is aware. They will be getting their festivities.
Lovely. For how long?
I would guess,
Couple
you know,
weeks.
you, and this is not meant to be sarcastic. You do
No.
not know with them how long they plan on staying.
Andy, I did notice gifts and donations are going down from 420 to 355. Why is that?
That was in another pass, looking back at the historical, what's been budgeted, that should have been corrected 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, so we're finally correcting that number. That's a number that had crept up in 14, 15, 16 budgets, and needed to be corrected, just a correction for 2020.
So did we receive them?
We received, there's two gifts and donations, obviously the money from TRF, and then there's also a payment from RPI as part of a agreement that was made many years ago for various properties that gets classified into that category. Those are-
So are they not paying?
No, they are. This is just to correct the budget amount. Those are the two payments that have been made to that account for the last 10, 15 years. We pulled all the historical data out.
Parking fines, I noticed they are estimated to go up another 100K.
That's basically, we're finally reaching the point with a lot of these revenues that when we look at the 3-year, 5-year average, we're throwing out the poor years, and it's finally justifiable to do the bump.
And building and alteration.
Just before we go on to parking, is that the case for that entire, each of those lines that are transportation?
What was the question there?
Just what's driving the increase in the estimates, and it's based on?
Under fines and forfeitures. So I take it the outside consultant is doing what we had hoped.
We had hoped that, it's a lot easier to manage that software than running it through our accounting system. It's more technologically advanced, so it's a lot easier to track. When it was in KBS, we couldn't even get aging reports
Oh,
on
I
it
recall.
because of the way it had to be set up. It was not conducive.
And Andy, can you get us a list? I'm not asking for right now. I don't think you would have it, but a list of unpaid, not who, just an amount.
So parking?
Yes. Please. And then the building and alteration.
That was an analysis done by the deputy mayor working with planning and code enforcement on anticipated projects for 2020.
That's a big bump, Monica.
Does it include the cement?
If you look at permits, A 3,025.55 for zeros.
723,050 goes up 877,
Right.
736.
Yes. Right here.
Page 10, middle of the page.
53.5.
Is that also vacant buildings? No. Yeah. So some of the, in some of the miscellaneous permits and say items like that, we can go into more detail at the general services meeting, but some of the miscellaneous permits have been kind of stagnant for years as far as budgeting goes. And when we looked at the Terra, and code enforcement actually produces monthly reports for us of actual, items that we've done and monies that we've collected. So we were able to do a little bit of walking through those miscellaneous permits, and these are project-based ones as well too. And I will be really honest with you, I take a look at all the projects that we have in the pipeline, and I essentially sometimes divide by 2. Because some of them are on track and some of them aren't, and you know what I mean? So we try to take we try to do an educated guess as to what's gonna be happening and what's not. Sometimes they'll split their permit, so sometimes they'll do their demolition and maybe foundation permits, and then they'll come in for their building permits afterwards. So we try to take into account all of those kind of idiosyncrasies that might happen with that too.
And where would we find the sales of our city-owned property? Is that in a different code, Andy?
That's
Because
in,
clearly we had sales.
that's in sale of property, page 10, right below. The one right below fines and forfeitures. Yeah, minor sales, $81,026.55, we budgeted $30,000.
Okay, so it's minor sales.
It's minor sales.
Why is it just accounting, I take it?
That's where it's historically been.
Council President,
Yes.
Just to that point, what's the distinction between that and the sale of city-owned real property?
Real property's always been considered, well, that's where people used to budget the sale when Monument Square is going. It's physical property itself. So minor sales are tangible items. City-owned real property is, actual parcels of land.
And
So
that
are
is-
city sale parcels though, or not?
So your foreclosed property sales are the,
Minor
it's
sales.
not minor sales. Minor sales is equipment and things like that.
So where are
Way
they?
more than minor.
Foreclosed properties are not a budgetary revenue item. You have to remember, if
Yeah.
you sell a property for $1,000, it has liens against it that has to be run through. It's a formula base.
How do we show up?
It gets booked through real property taxes in February of 2020 to 2019. We have to take, the easiest way to explain it is we have to break it out of the city liens, the bid liens, the county liens, and the library liens, and allocate everyone's portion based off the total amount of lien outstanding.
So all closing costs go towards that?
All closing costs and fees go to the city, so the assessor's fee, the comptroller's fee, legal fees, that's all revenue. But the actual payment itself for the property, foreclosed property sales has been much better in the last few years. The city has never made money on foreclosed property sales. The liens are too much.
Yeah, and quite frankly, if you recall, I think prior budgets, and I'm sure Mayor Madden will attest to this, at least I can recall, they would just throw a number in there of a sale of a major property. It wouldn't happen and we would have a budget hole. From my recollections, it was
Council
scary.
President?
Council member.
Just to that though, could we have that for the general services meeting to understand how many sales are happening in last year in 2019?
I'll bring it, but I'll forewarn you, it's real hard to follow.
Okay, can you bring it with a?
I'll bring it, but it's gonna take a while. It's gonna take a while to explain how it works.
So essentially, you have to remember going back to the conversation we just had a little bit ago about taxes and how we roll the taxes and re-levies and stuff. So we have the school taxes, we have the county bid, we have the library bid, the library fee, and all of those things that are still holding out here when we foreclose on a property. When we go through and do the foreclosure process, we go through and we do the mortgages and notify all those people, but our own stuff, we have to make this, the county whole, we have to make the school, not the county, the school district whole. So we have to offset, so if we sell a property for $1,000 and that property has $1,500 worth of school tax bill, we send them the portion of that, but we also have to, do all those other things for the other liens. So, while we might, you might see, if we sell a property for $50,000, you might see that can be some revenue, but the overall net of all of that together is most likely a loss for the city. That's why we've always been, and I'll be really honest with you, as the person who started the land bank, that's why I've always been an advocate of getting the city property out of the city's liability and get it into an entity so that the city can stop doing that and then not have that deficit essentially.
Well, I would like, we talked about this quite a few times, and Councilmember Kennedy has talked about at least a baseline offer to offset those taxes. For instance, if you put, say, a house, that owes $2,000, minimum bid, 2,500, whatever. I mean, to at least offset,
We know what
those
the
taxes.
minimum costs are.
right?
For context, in 2018, the city on around 50 property sales, after the city's proceeds from the foreclosed sales, the city lost $413,000. So how many?
How much?
$413,000 was lost in foreclosed property sales to the city in 2018.
So you also have to remember, some of those foreclosure numbers are really high, they haven't paid their bills in 3.5,
Right,
4
right.
years. So
That
if it's
misleads.
$4,000 worth of taxes, right, so times 3 or 4 times, right? So I think that's where your minimum bid for a rundown house that's not valuable could be more than the actual value of the house to go
I
into.
get that,
So
but
that's-
still,
How-
you
how
know,
many
think about
properties-
it, what if, property, was in okay condition? Can we at least
Well, we're-
distinguish?
Yeah, and we're getting those sales on that. I mean,
Yeah.
we're on those, like the one off of Camp Lab, you know what I mean, like up in the Emerald Greens, we got a good number for that
Right.
piece of property. But at the same time, yes, you could do that for some of them, and that's where some of the conversations and why we changed the code to allow a realtor to be able to do some of that work for us. But I think the other piece of it is you're always gonna have these derelict ones that are just gonna kind of hang out there, that you're never gonna be able to get somebody to pay what's owed in a lien in order to clear the building.
Just for context, I mean, I'm not disputing how much that loss number sounds like. In 2015, and granted there were more properties, the city lost $900,000.
How many properties?
And that year, it was 78 properties.
Council President? So lost to who? So those.
The city assumes
tax-
they
back
rewrite off,
taxes.
it's the back taxes of the liens, and we end up
schools.
having to write off to zero it out. We pick up the city of Troy liens. Just like the county picks up the Lansingburg liens, and the county writes off, in 2015, the county wrote off $557,000 liens. There's properties on that list that are not pretty.
Right, I guess I'm just trying to figure out like big picture, because at some point, the taxpayer is making that whole through their taxes that they're paying once they bought the building and are paying full taxes. So, I get that there's like a deficit on the front end, but at some point that's becoming, a net benefit to the city, and I'm just trying to understand how do we look at that? How can we gauge that?
So the biggest thing that I've seen in all of the work that I've done around the vacancies is that you have to get to it earlier. You have to use the properties earlier, and I know NICOM has been doing a lot of work on, I think it's Article 18 or 19 of our laws, of the New York State law, to be able to actually capture the foreclosures earlier, so that you can get to them before 3 years or 4 years, because the foreclosure process takes about a year alone just to do. So if you're able to capture them at 18 months and then fast forward that a little bit, you can do that, but
So are you suggesting that if that process is shortened, that would give us an opportunity
you
to
lose a year off of it.
lose, yeah,
And
okay.
then that mitigates a loss,
Right.
that's the key,
There's a couple bills to address that. In fact, I think one of those passed, council member.
So, let me try to be more understanding on this. Let's say a building is foreclosed after 3 years. There's 3 years of school taxes due in that building. The school district doesn't take a percentage, they want the entire, we pay them the entire fund, or we pay them a percentage.
We've already made them whole.
So this is our.
So each year we make that up, so
So
we already paid it in.
So
We collect.
we collect, so in March or April of every fiscal year, so this past year, we got turned over 2018-19, the city of Troy, school taxes unpaid. We collect them, fast forward March 2021, whatever's outstanding, we write them a check. And they're made whole, and then foreclosure begins on it. It's state law that school districts get made whole, it's not specific to Troy.
And the county does
The county does the Lansingburg, the collecting municipality statewide is dealing with this.
Yes. It's a real.
That's why it's in the tax overlay, you'll see add unpaid school taxes. We have to account for residents who have not paid their school taxes that are gonna be made whole in 2020.
And we have no way to lien the old, I still have the floor. We have no way we have no way to lien the prior owners for that school tax, even though we've taken the property, but now we take the loss.
The state
So once we take the property, they get
tax liens
indemnified.
stay with the property, not the owner.
We've tried.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, this whole lien thing, this whole thing is not specific to us.
No,
It's
I
something
know.
that's done statewide. It's-
Council member and then council member Cummings.
Previous year had like almost 400,000 in costs overall, was due to the number of sales, property.
53.
Alright, so I guess what our thought was, if we look at historical data, what the average property sale cost is over the course of like 5 years, say it's like 10 grand per property. Even if we were able to set a baseline price, for the minimum bid for the sale, no matter what, whether it's like 1,000 or 2,000, we just don't wanna keep seeing properties go for like $100 or $200, unless there really is, a benefit in that, but, I don't know, just even if we're able to set a $2 grand baseline, that would at least take 20% off. That's the way it is.
It's council member Cummings, council member December, council member Cummings.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is certainly
And you're right.
a process that we've been working through for the last couple of years. A lot of these buildings that go for those prices are buildings that need to be entirely gutted or torn down and may really be doing us a benefit getting that off of our liabilities. That's a building that's going to cost us $20,000 if we have to take it down, and we still have to pay the tax on it. So, if there's someone who's willing to deal with that and fix it up and own it, that's generally a good thing. I will say, certainly, as Deputy Mayor mentioned, we have certainly seen more respectable bids on the properties that are worthy, and a trend towards people being more willing to do that. I will say, I had a chance encounter with Barb Nelson, who's got some really good ideas around I guess she has some funding for the assessment of properties that would help us market them in a much more comprehensive way. So I'll continue to advocate for getting more and more information out to the public so that they know what to expect when they're bidding on properties, because that's what helps people bid what a property is worth. I think from my experience, people are willing to pay a fair value, but if they're not able to assess what that fair value is, then they have to keep enough to make sure they're going to be able to handle whatever comes at them. And so to the extent we can make sure people are aware of what issues exist in a building, they're then able to budget for making sure they can handle those issues and pay us a fair amount.
Just a comment on that, when we started the land bank, we actually hired TAP to come in and do an assessment of every building, and we paid them a certain dollar amount per building to come in, and they actually generated like a front to back, like a 2-page, just a flyer essentially with pictures, current pictures of as is, how it is, and their indication of what might need a structural analysis, what the condition of the roof is, where there's water leaks, if it's gutted, if there's copper, if there's not copper, and then some sort of a projected dollar amount of to what the level investment would be in order to bring that up under current value. Because I think that's also part of the challenge of what we're seeing too with some of the vacancies. It's like people who buy them and then they're still vacant, right? And they're not putting it into it because they're walking into these and they are like, holy crow. And that's why we changed that process of reviewing the bids to make sure people legitimately know what they're walking into when they're going there, instead of saying, I'm gonna spend $5 grand and I'm gonna paint the walls that are all moldy, right? So we know that that's not accurate. And so we've done a better job of analyzing that, but I think there's even better things like what Anash is talking about to produce an actual document to go with the house. And it's not saying this is tried and true. We're still saying you still need to do your own analysis, but this will give you an idea of what you're walking into so that it's like a buyer beware kind of situation. And I think that as we get more capacity in the city and as we can find more funding, if there's other offsets or other funding gaps that we can find out or funding opportunities, those are certainly something that we can start taking a look at with our properties that we do get back to the foreclosure list. The challenge we do have is sometimes we need to slow down to speed up, and that foreclosure process, once we get the okay from the courts, we tend to fly right through that and get, and take the process as fast as we can to get to the end of the year. Because typically it hits about July, and we have certain things that we have to do in order to get to December, right? So it's a compressed time constraint. So I think if we can slow down a little bit, we might garner better bidding, people can get mortgages, people can construction loans, and we can start looking at those kinds of things. So better investment.
Councilmember.
Yeah, thank you. And I would just echo my colleague's comments, Anasha. I think that makes sense, and I think we want to make sure we're just setting people up for success as they're going into this process. So I like the idea of getting a sort of bigger scope. I'm not opposed to what Councilmember Kennedy was saying. I think that could make sense. I just think we need more data to figure out how to make that work, because I don't want to put more barriers up, especially if someone's coming into a building and it's going to have a lot of liens, or if it's going to have something else. So my question about the sort of the scope that you did with the land bank, does that include any analysis on the liens itself? Are we able to get that information?
So the liens, when we foreclose on a property, when the person buys it, there are no liens on the property. So they're buying it for whatever they paid, their closing costs, and then there's a prorated from the time of sale to the current year, whatever's remaining of that tax year, they pay that. So if it's a $2,000 bill for the taxes and there's 4 months left, it's whatever that prorated amount is. So that's what they're buying, and that's what they're paying for when they purchase the thing. They don't have to clear out some of those liens and all that other kind of stuff. We don't make them pay the old school taxes. We don't make them
Because those are already made whole by the city.
We've taken those all.
Yeah,
We've cleaned the slate. It's a good claim deed, so everything's been wiped clean and they buy it as is.
Thanks.
Councilmember Cummings.
Do we pay any interest to the school district on that, or do we just collect?
When we make them whole,
Yeah, when we make them whole.
when we make the school district whole, we pay the full balance of interest due at that time. We pay the total amount outstanding, total principal, total interest.
But we make them whole annually,
2
right?
years after we receive the liens, we make them whole.
Okay, so when we do the re-levy, we don't make them whole immediately.
School taxes aren't re-levied and the property taxes are separate liens.
But they're,
The
From-
city's
from the
responsibility, the city's responsibility,
liens
it's the
separate.
city's responsibility to collect, not on the property taxes.
gotcha. Interesting. Yes, that, understood.
Okay.
But, so they're accruing, interest, which we have not yet, so we've not yet paid that amount to the school district until the foreclosure process starts.
And we're essentially paying ourselves back.
Pay ourselves back.
Gotcha.
Because we've already made Troy's school whole by the time we foreclose. You can only do 3 years to foreclose,
We make them whole after
2 years. So we'll make 18, 19 liens will be made whole in, first quarter of 21.
Anyway, I think we've gotten off track. This is interesting. Thank you.
Councilmember Kennedy, and then we'll move on.
Then the library isn't made whole.
The only, entity that's made whole is the school district.
On page 9, we kind of skipped that, but real quick, I did notice the pilot for the water and sewer. Andy, if you look under local sources, we had actual receipts of 646, estimated 646, and then 0.
Page 10, very last line, it's been reclassified.
Oh, cool. Okay, you know what, I was going, yeah, very good. And then the only other thing on that page, the franchise, we are still, I take it, negotiating that. Where is that? Any progress?
That's a question for, Corporation Council.
I'll make sure I send them a follow-up email. Okay?
I know we countered, I believe.
Because I mean, obviously, that could be a huge,
Or the settlement.
right.
It's a settlement. It's a one shot.
Councilman.
Councilmember Cummings.
While we're on the payments and the taxes though, I do notice there's a drop. What's the cause of that? Certainly there's been a few new projects.
We budget, I get the numbers from the county IDA, the city IDA, and we budget based, and then I project city pilots, and that's what the forecast showed this year.
have some graduated out of being pilots and are back to
I-
full
They
tax.
may have,
rolls.
I didn't
I
look
noticed
at,
our tax rolls went up by about $7-8 million, which is good.
I didn't compare project to project with quantity. I mean, we
But-
certainly can, but
Yeah, and EMT, actually, it didn't go down substantially because the 646 is just in a different code. So if you're looking at it,
Down
you're
by-
really, you're looking at maybe 70, 70K. So-
Still, I would have thought it went up unless
A little
it
bit.
moved into taxable value, which there is an additional $8 million in taxable value, so maybe it moved into that.
and then I don't.
Okay. Is that for
Sitting on the
you?
idea, I know there's some new projects coming down the line, so I want to make sure we're not missing anything there. Noting that, on the assessment numbers, we're up about 8 million.
What page are you on?
Back to page 7 for a second.
Yikes, we're going backwards. That's not good.
I just wanted to check in if we're gonna talk now or when about Sharon's request to talk someday about
Well,
the
we have that
percentages.
tonight, so we can ask her when we get her department, okay? And Sharon, we'll take you up first, okay, so, awesome. Yes, after Jason has 45 minutes worth of questions.
Council President,
Council member,
on page 10 in fines and forfeitures.
yeah,
Page
EMD
10,
fines and forfeitures.
fines and forfeitures, code violations, we're hiring, more of the officers and code enforcement officers, are we anticipating
Middle officers will be in the garbage fund.
fines? Oh, so it goes
Litter
on both.
officers, the collection of those fines will be seen as revenue in the garbage fund. And then the code officers will be in the code. So we have one new code officer added to the budget this year, so that will be in the general fund.
Can we say that there's gonna be more code violations?
So based on historical data and how we budget, we take a look, and I've actually increased them from where we've been in the past, based on the information that was presented to me from the department itself.
And EMD, I'm noticing insurance recoveries are down by 40-some K. What's that attributed to?
So the 18 was, 68 was,
Just an
just an
anomaly.
anomaly, that's what.
Council member, are you good with your question? Yeah. I take it that's a no.
Council
We
President.
did increase code violations. We did increase them.
Council member?
I'm just trying to understand, the debt, versus the revenues. So we've got 80.9 million in debt. And I just want, oh, I'm sorry, so the debt number is on 6. I'm just trying to figure out what the total revenue number is. I did a quick tally, general sewer, 98.7 million. I'm just trying to understand if those numbers are accurate. I know you're bringing up grants with relation to the,
So that's the total, obviously, debt outstanding, not debt paid.
sorry?
That's just, that's the
Right.
whole
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
The whole thing, right?
Right.
I'm just trying to understand the sort of a surplus deficit question. If our revenues, are we bringing in more revenues than the debt that we have outstanding?
So,
I don't know if I follow what you're
So
asking.
that's like your mortgage, right? It's
Yeah.
not the payment. So the $80 million is the whole,
And
every
The whole
total,
thing, right?
right? So our monthly payment is featured in our expenses.
Thank you.
Is that what you're looking for?
Yes.
Okay, so no, we are not in the hole.
No. No,
Thank you.
I was wondering where you were going with it. We are not. Okay, are we good to move to page 11, everyone? Beautiful. EMP, anything striking? Obviously, our community development has gone up, from 2018.
That's equal to 270,000.
Just so the public, if you look at this later or you're watching, this is a false alarm, hopefully.
Thank you on the elevator.
Yes. Elevator issue. Okay, Andy,
So
sorry.
it's community development, that's the cost of the CDBG department plus $270,000 in code enforcement. State aid, once again, remains the same. Mortgage tax, the 18 was an anomaly, looking back historically, so it justified a $30,000 increase for nothing to the level of 2018. I will note, a few pages ago, sales tax finally did justify a bump to $16.5 million. CHIPS is out on the revenue side, and CHIPS is out on the expenditure side. We're gonna run the whole thing through capital projects because it's a whole lot easier to account for in one fund than two. And I know, Council President, you would ask the FRB grant. I'm gonna take all 3 installments in 2020. And the grant will be drawn down in full in 2020 and be done.
So we're done in 2020.
For just that grant.
Oh,
Just
okay.
that grant, and we're
Okay.
just gonna take in 2020 and it'll be fully drawn.
One part of the grant.
Can you, maybe break that out for us at some point? The FRB, like what we've received?
Well, we see when we have it.
Yep.
Sure.
Thank you.
And that's it for at the bottom, the 2.22, that remains the same as it was budgeted for in 2019 from the water fund. And the debt service fund, the 610,000, we've discussed that. But that's that ordinance, I believe, that was passed in September of
20.
residual funds and interest and things like that coming from the debt service fund back to the general fund to pay off
Right.
debt in 2020.
You know what, Andy, under public safety, is there a reason, like, it just seems like we were so successful in 2018 and then 2019 got a few, this
So
cancer.
there's still grants. Grants are, the way we look at it is you can put it in the budget, we'll amend the budget in January, or we won't put it in the budget and we'll amend the budget in January. It's easier, I think it's cleaner, not easier, to budget it at zero and bring the legislation in January for February when we know the remaining balance of grants. These grants that run that cross years, it's just an approximation. Once we can close out the expenses and see what's remaining to amend the budget then. So while there's a lot of zeros, it's just gonna be amended in 2020.
So
Council member.
on the expense side, those grants are paying for overtime typically.
So if it's,
To what extent are they also paying for things that are currently budgeted in our,
they're not.
they're not at all?
They're not. The expenses line are all zero. So if you look at the police department, the 103 and the iteration of subcodes that there are, they're all gonna be zero.
Right, but, so when we amend that, when we get a grant for $200,000 and put some money in that, are we able to amend down some that we were paying people otherwise to stay on staff? Or is it purely overtime?
Do you mean reducing?
So for example, I think sometimes it's pays for an officer, right? Some of these programs pay for one officer to do something, right?
We haven't had that grant in a while, but yes, there are grants out there to do that. We haven't had that grant, because that was the SROs.
So if you had a grant that paid for a permanent salary of an officer, I would highly recommend you use that money, I use it in quotes, use the money for the officer and amend the budget to buy a piece of equipment because chances are that officer's gonna be there.
It's a one shot.
It's a one shot. That officer's gonna be there when the grant's gone.
Okay,
Interesting. Cool, thank you.
moving along, the interfund, the 2.2, we're doing.
We can't have $222 for that just for OCD?
Through the chair.
Yes. Go ahead.
We kept it the same.
So water fund transfer.
Water
2.2.
Right.
Great.
Okay, debt service down.
Yeah, but we had set aside money 2018 for 2019 for the max, so they went down for that.
And then we talked about the bulk, or we didn't, the bulk real quick, are they being increased or do you just envision more people participating?
So it's an increase, so where we budgeted last year, or for this year, and where we are for this year, it's actually increased, so we're exceeding that. So we were able to adjust it based on, What we did is we took the number of fines or violations per month and were able to amortize that out. We're pretty consistent, like I said, at many of the neighborhood meetings, these guys are rocking it. I mean, and it's making effect. We have lots of visitors to City Hall, which is what you want, because we have one that consistently comes in that owns 26 properties throughout the city of Troy, and he complains all the time about how he has to pay the fee, and we just tell him he needs to manage properties better, the fee stands. And we've had certain circumstances, like, for example, Tina, right, who had the couch, across the street at Stewart. So we still have that, and we're still accommodating those one-offs and those kinds of things. So, but what we're seeing is that we're able to increase the revenue streams on the violations based on the information and the stuff that we're already seeing.
And we can tackle it during GS. We have a vacant lot right by our house. What happened was somebody illegally dumped like 4 bicycles. Well, others thought it was just a dumping place for them, and so they added to it. So we had a grocery cart, and then in the grocery cart, people put things in, and then some brush the next day. So we can flush through it during GS, because I know it's honestly a bigger conversation.
And that's also one of the locations that maybe if it's a continual problem or an habitual problem, that's one of the areas with one of those cameras that we have. So in addition, I will remind the council, as well as anybody else, because I know you interface with a lot of people, is if you do see 4 bicycles sitting in an empty lot, call us. Because we can get rid of it before it becomes
Right.
a dumping ground,
Yeah.
right? Or call the Tribeca Bike Rescue
Yeah.
and say, do you need a donation? The last thing we need is more bicycles, but, but I think that we have a lot of them. But I think that that's, it's making sure people call us, because we're very sympathetic to that. We understand that it might not be you, right? And we're very sympathetic to that. We look at it, these guys are ripping open garbage bags. We've already gotten 3 illegal dumpers. And these guys literally open up the garbage bags, they find tags, they find addresses, and Mainville is a huge partner with us in the community policing. And they bring him in, and then they start the process of getting some warrants and stuff.
Yeah, we can talk about more. I know the police are a part of this, and I think they want to discuss their spending more time than they envisioned on this issue. So we can talk about when we get to GS, but they may be coming to you regarding this issue. So, but I'm with you, and
We meet with the chiefs every week, so if the chiefs have a concern, they can certainly bring that up on our list.
I think it'll go to the chief eventually. I'm just giving you a heads up. And then lastly, I did refer like 3 people in the past couple of days to Chuck and illegal. Yes,
So, Chair,
thank you.
isn't it possible to train our litter guys to write those reports instead of our police having to take the time out of their schedules to go out and write a report for a dumping? Can we send a litter officer there and let him write up that report and keep our police home on the street, do what they do best?
So if it is a regular, like say it's an apartment building, right? So the litter patrol officers are essentially the ones who will go and write up the violations. And they'll write up all of that information and produce they'll produce the fines, and then the other guys will actually fill out the form that says what they should be billed or the itemized bill. As far as pressing charges against somebody, you need the police department for that. And that's actually a function of the community police department. That's where, we're not calling patrol to come in and do litter patrol. We're asking the community police officers to assist us with that. And it's not an everyday thing, I don't believe, but now that we have 2 litter patrol officers that are able to go out and about and do all of these things. And I will be honest with you, we worked with the police department on the camera systems itself, because we needed to know that they needed to make sure that they had enough clarity in what we purchased so that they can press charges and they can see and have, good evidence of somebody or a license plate or whatever it might be. So we worked in concert with them. It's a partnership. It is a true partnership. And I know working with Officer Mayfield and Officer Hoover, they've been tremendous to work with. They have a great relationship with code enforcement and DPW and sanitation. So if they do have concerns, then we haven't heard of that yet. So it's certainly something that's brought to us. We will certainly work through it.
Okay.
And, yep, council member.
So I didn't get a hard number about where we're at this year with, full pickup.
I can get it for general services.
Yeah, we can talk about this, John.
Yep.
And then also, have we done any commercial pickup? Yeah, we're still implementing that. So we don't have any hard numbers there yet. This is
Yeah, we
guess.
do commercial pickup for once a week.
But in terms of
Yeah.
billing, this 200,000 is an educated guess.
Yes.
It'll get refined next year.
Yep.
Thank you.
I would think it may come in more than that,
It is projected to come in higher,
Yeah.
but we
conservative,
work with him.
yeah.
Mr. Conservative.
Absolutely.
You're
Like, I
welcome.
actually thought it was supposed to be 300,000, I just looked at it, I'm like, wait, what happened to that?
Ah. Okay, are we good? We'll move along. All
Do you
right,
wanna,
Andy.
do you wanna do Sharon?
Yes,
Assessor's office?
Perfect.
Before, I'll lob off 2 questions.
of
Probably.
mine?
Well, maybe.
Yes,
Permanent salaries, we'll get the list.
thank you.
I would say approximately 98% of salary increases that you see in this document are based off of either contractual step increases or ratification of contracts with different unions in the city. The other thing is there's a pension increase. We did not defer a penny in this budget. However, PFRS, ERS was good. ERS stayed the same and was relatively good.
Everybody knows what that is.
And employee retirement system, any non-police or fire employee. TFRS, the contribution percentages for active employees, not the payback in prior years, the payment for right now increased, I believe it was over $300,000. The contribution percentages, according to the state comptroller, modestly increased anywhere from 1.5% to 4.8% for various tiers.
When you send me the list, can you put that in there?
Yes.
Thank you.
So that
That's-
goes to,
Right.
we'll get through
And
pension and
that's what
salaries for
they
the most part.
send us.
That's what they send us.
Right.
It was to the point that I contacted the state comptroller's office, because I don't really want them to write anything up. And said, how are, you give these projections with these significant increases, can we look at how we, but not that I want to budget pension wrong, but look at our salaries. They flat out said, we will write you up if you do not budget this way. We budget in accordance with their recommendations are.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, we'll do Sharon. Hi, Sharon.
I'll sit with you.
Forty-three. It's in here. Let's make it 43. 43. Times 6. Okay, let's do that. All right. Sharon, so, want to take us through and,
So basically, I kept everything the same except for dues and subscription. I increased $2,000 to $2,500. And I took $2,000 out of the consultant services line to $15,000. Everything else remained the same.
and the salary increase, I take it, is that contractual? Yep, thank you. And the temporary, we're gonna keep that, and it's working out well?
It is.
Anyone have questions, want to talk to us? How's the commercial appraisal? We had hired the company to come in and help you. How's that working out and how does it work real quick?
So we got a late start. They've been doing some, I've sent them some of the building plans so far. I haven't received anything back yet. So I don't have a good report at this point because it's still too early, but they are working on it.
This is, if you recall, the bar that I'm not super fond of, but, so can you maybe give us like a heads up when they do get something back? I'm just
Sure.
curious. Yeah, so they haven't done anything.
Well, they have, I haven't gotten anything back yet. They have their people drawing, doing the drawings, going out to visit. So,
Just in terms of timing, Council President. Thank you. Am I right, the assessments get locked in the spring for this budget? So
correct.
this wouldn't affect this budget, but if they get it, do they have a deadline of by the time you lock it in for next year?
They should have it to me by March 1st.
So then they'll go through whatever contestations might happen and then get locked in for the 2021 budget.
Correct.
Questions? Sharon, did you wanna fill us in anything major going on, or?
We're just plugging along, trying to keep up with the building permits, catch up a little bit and then move forward and we're on a steady pace.
Council President?
Yes,
Yeah.
council member.
Just the contractor guards, is it like the results come in one big bulk deliverable or?
I'm anticipating a few at a time as they finish them. But like I said, we really don't need them until March 1st, so there's no rush on their end. And we did get a late start, so.
Hey Sharon, you heard the convo earlier just regarding foreclosures, things like that. Do you have any recommendations on how to try to capture a little bit earlier, and do you have any thoughts?
It would be great if we could capture them earlier. That's more of a legal process.
State, yeah. Do you have any out-of-the-box ideas, or?
I think that, as Anasha said, we are getting more for the properties. And as what Jim said, if we get $100 for a building, that's one that's falling down, that, we're happy to unload it for 100, because we don't sell good ones for 100. We currently have a property on the list on South River. We just put it back on because somebody wants to purchase it. We had taken it off because it was a demo. It's clearly a demo. But this person begged me to put it back on the list because he can fix it or tear it down or whatever he's gonna do with it. Yeah. So it's back on the list.
Where is this?
South River down,
By the jail, right?
down where they used to line up for the flag.
Yeah, okay.
There's some little cottages kind of houses back. Remember the woman who was all excited to buy the house?
Butterfly.
Yes,
Her. So that she bought a house down there, but this
Okay.
is also, so Danny Kinlan
Kinlan.
and Weatherwood bought one, and then,
Okay.
And
One
the
next door
neighboring
to
one
this.
was knocked down. Good to hear,
So he's supposed to bid this month. I haven't seen him yet, but it's early yet. So we have until October 31st to bid on the houses that we have out right now. So we'll see.
And you, just to give you a heads up, I'm being asked about the Euclid. We'll talk about that, just where it is.
Everybody's asking about the Euclid.
Yeah.
There's one person.
Well, on
But he's
behalf
asking
of a
everybody.
couple people,
He's calling everyone.
yes. So,
Anasha's doing some things
We're working on it.
and
What's that?
yeah, we should get together only because I think we're out of the loop on what's going on, and I feel very uncomfortable being in the loop. I do.
Haven't talked about it.
Yeah.
But
It's the Euclid at the end, it came off.
it's not
before
Euclid,
close.
it's Stanford Ave.
Yeah,
But anyways,
it's behind you.
Is that piece of property?
Yes.
the road that is theoretically could
paper.
provide access to the site that the Rensselaer Land Trust would like to purchase, but maybe doesn't, but also doesn't actually, is landlocked and has only access to a paper street that we don't maintain, and we don't know if we should maintain. It's a complicated situation.
And the homeowners are really concerned down there because,
the guy that wants to make the garage into an apartment.
Yes.
so let's group on it, okay? Monica?
Yeah, we'll talk
Absolutely.
about it in a budget.
Let's group and make a decision and move on.
Thank you.
Exactly.
That's
like
what I'd like to see. Thank you
Results.
very, very much.
I like what you
Good.
All right.
Sharon, anything else that, we should be apprised of? What do you have in store for 2020? Anything new? And, you know, now that you have a temporary, you gotta be like making some headway. You were bogged down, so give us a quick, 2 minutes.
So again, as Anasha pointed out earlier, the assessment went up $8 million. Hopefully this year, for 2020, it'll be higher than that.
Right.
With all the new construction. We're capturing a lot of additions, property sales are out of this world. I don't know if you're looking at the sales out there, but wow, they are amazing. I talked to Joe Dalton the other day, he's a realtor and used to be on a grievance board. He's listing a house this week that is 30% higher than what he listed it for in 2015. So, I mean, we're seeing a lot of that. It's exciting. It's a great spot to be in.
Council President?
Councilman.
Are you seeing that sort of in different parts of the city? I asked specifically because I know Little Italy, we've had a lot of conversations with that group, and they've seen a lot more. Sales are going quicker, and values as well. But is that something you see throughout the city?
It's not throughout the whole city, but it's basically downtown and it's stretching both ways.
Right.
Not just on this side of Hoosick anymore. We've got some just over on the other side of Hoosick that sold for a lot of money, and down, towards South Troy as well, and up Hill Street.
Yep.
Wow.
Oh, the one house on Hill Street.
Joe Maz's mom's old house.
Yeah, that's a nice house.
Yeah, so it's stretching. It's not just downtown.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion? Yes.
Yeah, the
Councilman.
discussion I hinted at earlier, what's it called, the equalization rate,
Yes.
Yeah.
where are we at with that?
So
What do you
our
think, Ann?
equalization rate's at 93%. We filed this year.
It was 100, so
It was 100 since 2013, so we maintained it a long time, which is good. I'm expecting next year to drop as well.
tell us a little about the impact of that, what it actually means for us and for people.
The biggest thing it means is that people are confused because when they get the tax bill and they see that there's an assessed value, there's an equalization rate, and then there's a full market value, they automatically think their assessment got raised and they weren't notified, which is not the case because the taxes are based on the assessed value. But basically what it means is that the properties are selling higher than what they're assessed for. So it's unequal. And it doesn't mean that the whole city is at 93%, but on paper, it is.
So right now, everyone's
Correct.
assessment went up a little bit, sort of.
Everybody's full market
Everybody's
value.
full market, everybody's assessment stayed the same, their full market value went up.
Correct.
And that's an indication that there may be some level of unfairness,
Correct.
because that went up equally across the city rather than targeted at where value is going. Although it does sound like value is going up in a lot of places.
What was the rate before we did the?
Use 14% in 2012.
2012, the equalization rate. Sorry,
Councilman.
Chair. It was 14%. But you had said for years it was 100, but prior to 2012, it
Prior
was.
to their reassessment.
Right up to the reassessment, it was 14%.
So we have a while to wait till we have to do this.
No, we don't. We don't
We don't wanna go back.
We don't wanna do that.
There's a lot of unhappy people.
All right, moving along. Yep. Sharon, all good?
All good?
Well, so do we have a plan or thoughts about?
We'll start planning in the future.
Okay.
Right now, I think we're in a good spot. We're catching up with building permits and, let's get there first.
It's not the current project.
Get them live.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Good job,
Sounds
Sharon.
good.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Sharon.
All right, Sharon, have a safe trip home. Thank you. All right, moving along, can we jump back, Andy?
What do we have?
We have all the departments, the mayor's office and others. I just want to make sure, did everyone get a chance, obviously, to look at the revenues and expenditures? Andy?
I'll let the mayor go.
All right, Andy, you also contingency.
I'm gonna get there and I'm gonna do that quick tonight too.
Very, very good. Mayor, we'll tackle your office, please.
That'll be mercifully short. I don't expect to be more than 55 or 60 minutes. It'll be a long. The mayor's budget starts on page 24, but I'd probably prefer you look at 27 if you can.
Yep.
27 covers the 101 line. There are no changes in staffing. There's no changes in any of the salaries. That remains static as it has in the past 4 budgets.
Mayor,
Yes.
I know there's, been debate back and forth regarding, grant writer. The departments right now are pretty much doing their own grant writing, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
We did have a grant writer in 16.
I think
She
when
started in
we
16.
came in, 17, she started in 16.
She started in
Was it
16, yeah, I think she lasted through 17. When we sought to replace her, we could not find a candidate for the money that we had budgeted that was worth hiring at that level. So we have, we punted, not punted, but we've made do since then, working through the departments.
And
And we've spent, you know,
consultants. we have a
Monica has
couple.
spent a fair amount of time, I've contributed time to grant writing as well. So that's probably actually the biggest change in the mayor's office budget, but I will go through the lines. Subtotals for code 1 are increased a little bit just because of a change in longevity for an individual. Office supplies, we are looking at a little bit less in 2020. I'm sorry, we split that out between materials and supplies, so we picked that up in 303. So that remains static. Most everything in code 4 other than consultant services is the same. Consultant services, we had budgeted 40,000 for grant writing in 19. We did not use those funds, so we're not going to budget in 20. Instead, we're going to rely on the departments. Andy can go over code 8. I don't think there are any significant changes there. A little bit of a reduction in healthcare. Is that because I become Medicare eligible? I think I become Medicare eligible next year, so that's pretty good. Well, that's my contribution. Thank you very much. So it's pretty simple. I don't-
It's just a number.
Oh, no, it's more.
Yeah, to see Jim Caruso walking up the stairs.
Yes.
I
Well,
felt bad for him.
I'm trying to not use the elevators this week, and this was the wrong week to do it.
Council President,
Councilman.
did you mention the consultant services already? I see there's 40,000 down. Was that moved somewhere else? In code 4,
Moved to each department for their grant writing?
that was, right. We had budgeted 40,000.
Correct, we had budgeted 40,000 for the, for the grant writing.
Right, okay, so that's presumably going into another department for that kind of.
The
No.
funding is-
Yeah.
Oh, that's a cut, just thought. Okay,
Uh-uh.
great.
That's a cut.
And, this sounds kind of silly, but people have asked, if you don't spend your money, where does it go?
It goes to the mayor's pocket.
Mayor's retirement.
And they're on you.
It goes, if money is not spent, it is part of the fund balance at the end of the year.
And what was that last year? What was that last year?
1.3 maybe.
Yeah.
I can't remember where it finished. There's a lot of numbers running through my mind.
Are you finding there that the departments are really like looking in the department to change and kind of change the culture and change the way they're budgeting? Or are you working with them on that? Because I see a little bit of a change.
Well, we're constantly trying to change operations here. We're trying to figure out how to do what the public is looking for. from us with an inadequately sized staff. So we're constantly experimenting with that, and there are successes and there are failures. If there weren't failures, then it would suggest maybe we're not trying creatively enough. But we're modifying that. In terms of budgeting, Andy and the deputy mayor sit down with each department, and they, get their wish list at the beginning of the budget
Right.
process,
I
and then we sit
remember
and work through that with them and make them justify what they're asking for. I think, I don't see people wasting money. And we don't give them enough to waste, frankly.
Right.
So,
Thank
but
you.
people understand the position that we're in.
Anything else in your department?
No, I just to pick up on a couple of comments that were made earlier, I do think we need to be thinking about budgeting next year for a partial reval. So there are classes of properties that are dramatically different than when the reval was done some years ago. So the market has changed. We don't want to see the equalization rate drop much lower. It becomes problematic for us. So I think that is something we're going to be watching closely as the year unfolds. And it would probably not, it's not going to be a full reval, but it would be a segment of the market. So it might be two families if we're seeing significant shifts in the two family values, or three families if we see significant shifts in that area. The point is that we want to stay as close to 100% as we possibly can. We should never go 20, 30, 40 years again without doing a reval. It's just, you create too many problems and you spend way too much money. And frankly, it's an awful lot of data for a company, whether it be GAR or somebody else, to do and to get as perfect as we would like to see it.
Mayor, do you envision, because I'm hearing from landlords like major concerns about the new Tenant Protection Act, and, their just the whole process and how things are changing. Do you foresee some problems here in Troy?
Yeah, well, I have a little experience in
I know
property
you do.
management, and I would say that they swung the pendulum too far in this, and I do believe there will be some corrective legislation in the next session. But I think the steps they took are ultimately going to end up hurting the very people they sought to help.
Okay.
It's one thing in New York City to have protections of this sort, but in upstate where the market is not as lucrative, I think our landlords are already stressed, the decent landlords are already stressed in getting the rents that they need in order to maintain their properties the way we want to see them maintained. Like I say, in New York City, it's an entirely different animal, but I think it is going to drive up the cost to tenants, and that's going to hurt those who can least afford it. So I think there will be some pushback. There already is pushback from the Landlord Association. I think there will be some rollback in the legislature in the next session.
I hope so. And I know you have such depth in that field. I was very curious. Well, we're talking about properties. Oh. Anything else? All right. You're not free to go.
That was 2 weeks.
Great.
I'm gonna start in the back and work to the way front, if that's okay.
Fair enough.
Page
We
one.
are going into
I'm gonna
the
I'm just gonna go through debt really quick, page 169. I'm gonna talk about 169 and 171 kind of together.
Okay.
This dovetails back to what we talked about earlier about the current amount of debt outstanding, particularly bond anticipation notes. So 9710, you're gonna see, so 601 and 701 is in that. 600 and 700 are regular traditional serial bonds. You're gonna see an increase in principal of about 300,000, in interest of 110,000. As we talked about earlier this year, in August, when we did our debt issuance, we converted $5 million of the city's local share of the seawall to serial bond to take advantage of good interest rates at that time. That's the cause of that increase. We also serial bonded other items as a part of that, trying to convert as much of the city projects to long-term debt once they're completed as soon as possible to take advantage of these rates.
And, you know, I think the picture for us will be
It'll be much
so
clearer.
much clearer if you get us that list at some point.
So then if you go to 171, the increase in vans is 300,000 approximately. Again, that's because of the amount of bond anticipation that we're currently carrying. I'll get you the spreadsheet, but just for context, for tonight, the aggregate of general water and garbage fund bans are the only three with bans. It's currently $43.75 million between paydowns in 2020 of grant or local share, plus conversion to serial bond. That balance as of right now is projected to go down to 21.5 current bans outstanding. It's not including any new issuances, that's just where we currently stand. We're looking at converting $13.1 million next year to serial bonds. That's a recommendation in talking with fiscal advisors to really start looking at converting these things over. Especially where rates are, it's advantageous for the city to do this now, not went through the full 5 years on bans and then look to convert.
So you're saying before the ban reaches its lifespan, you're gonna
Get it
turn
out,
them,
turn it to serial bond now.
and what will that do for us?
It locks your interest rate in for, so every time you issue a ban, you go through a
So
bidding
it's like a
process.
mortgage.
It's a mortgage, so we're just gonna set everything now.
So what's
These are
the
low
interest
interest
rate?
rates.
What's the interest rate?
I haven't talked to Janine about rates since we closed on the last one. Again, like I've said before,
Right.
when the bids came in for the serial bonds in August, they had to completely redo the payback schedules because they were so much better than what we anticipated. So we continue to work through that and take advantage of that now. The other thought was plan everything now with Janine, so we're in lockstep. Janine Rodgers-Crusoe is our representative from fiscal advisors. Just get it all locked in now so we have an idea of what we're doing.
And the ban, it's only what we use, correct?
Correct, so if you have unused,
Right.
that's why we don't convert until the project's done,
Okay.
because if you have unused proceeds, you can pay it down now. Once you go to serial bond, it's fixed. So if you have residual unused money of $100,000, you can't use that. You can use it for your payment, but it's a one-shot
Right.
that time, but you can't use it to pay down additionally. There's no prepayment on serial bonds.
Interesting. Are other munis doing that too? Andy?
It's a recommendation she said she's making across the board to convert. Page 173, the increase.
Yep, council member.
Who's doing the tracking of sort of, obviously you can't know for sure, but where those rates are gonna go? Why is it that we're deciding to jump in now? I know they're historically low now, but
It's consultation with fiscal advisors.
they just,
Janine does this statewide. They are very reputable
Yes.
in what they do.
and so they're watching global trends and saying,
It's what they do
we're
for
doing
a
well
living.
now.
They do closings every day.
They're in the market every day with other municipalities, so they see the
Right.
trends.
They
It's
see
not,
the trends.
it's not just an estimation on their part, it's their reality.
Page 173, that's the installment purchase debt. Just want to note, this increase is Siemens. We are looking to close the next, I'm hoping, next 2 or 3 weeks on the first phase. So that's what that bump is.
So the first phase, what are they doing? Is this the negotiation phase, I take it? And we can go over like in depth, Monica, at GS, but is it the negotiating phase and, or is this first the financing phase?
So the financing we're closing on right now is for the first phase, which will include a lot of the mechanical, the roofing, a lot of those components, the lighting upgrades within the buildings and facilities themselves. And then once we get to the point where we're in sync of that, we're negotiating, we're finishing the audit having National Grid finish their audit of streetlights, the comparison,
Mhm.
finding a final number, presenting that to them, negotiating, going to PSC, and then we'll close a second closing just for the streetlights, because we'll have the final number for National Grid, we'll have the approval, and then we'll close on that at a later date. So essentially, for Andy, it'll be 2 closings, but it's all one project.
Did anyone have any questions?
What, House President, what was the two, I'm sorry, that last part, you said there'd be 2 closings, can you explain that again?
We're gonna finance it over 2 phases.
Oh, okay,
It's
so,
cheaper for the city to finance it over 2 phases, and there's no sense in issuing the streetlight piece until
So we
the
actually,
grid
Until we're
stuff's
ready.
ready, until the grid stuff's ready.
Monica, is there a way to at least hold them a little more accountable in terms of replacing lights?
so.
I know Paul's working on a few and they're
Yeah, so
just-
what I usually, so what we do, just so to kind of let everybody know, so Captain Montanino every month has a detail that goes through and takes down all the street poles and numbers and everything that are out. We submit that to National Grid. Unfortunately, it's hundreds long at any given time. So it takes a little bit of time. But what I do tell people is to make sure that, like Lisa Reed texted you, and I think she texted you and you gave her a different answer, but that's okay.
I asked Paul.
No, well, but yeah, so she texted me and I just send that information. Is if people can give us an address, or not an address,
A
but
number.
a poll
Phone
number
Yeah.
and the street. It's very important to get the street.
There's a web form for this too.
And there's a web
Yeah.
form for it as well, but usually if they just send it to me, if they email it to me, send me a picture, then I just forward it on to Bob Chevy, our contact, and he has Cheryl in his office put it in the system, and
Is
then,
that web form automatically going into?
no, it does not. We could probably look at that though, certainly, it just they change sometimes over there too. But we won't have that problem in
Right.
hopefully 6 months.
Right.
So it'll be, last, because they're LEDs, and they will last for at least 5 years before we have to worry about that.
I do have a question about that.
Do you have anything else on that? Okay.
It's not the question you're expecting. You can answer that later. But on the installment purchase debt, I know we have some guaranteed savings from them.
Yes.
But most of those guaranteed savings are from the LED portion.
Correct.
For this 2020 budget, do we have an ability, first of all, our savings guaranteed on an annual basis, do we expect to have to realize those savings in the 2020 budget?
Yes, we already reflected that in the expenses.
Is there a way to do a breakout of that? Because I assume it's sort of scattered through the expenses.
The majority of it we put into the streetlights.
Okay.
And then we put, actually, I don't think we put any into the utility costs themselves. But we did put it into, or the utility costs for just general National Grid bills that we have. But a majority of the savings is coming out of the utilities themselves for the streetlights. And we did take it out of that, and that's reflected in the expenses this year.
Okay, so the streetlights goes down a bit based on the assumption that it'll happen in 6 months.
Correct. Yeah, it's not necessarily 6 months, but yes.
Something.
Yeah, I think it was more like 8.
Okay, great.
Yeah, because we anticipated April and May that it would
But
be.
those last 4 months, will we see enough savings to pay for this, these projects?
It's close. It's close. Yes,
And certainly going forward, we'll save a lot more.
yes. The first year, because it's a partial year.
And
it'll be a little
it
bit
sounds
less.
like we're front engineering the stuff that has less immediate savings.
Correct.
More deferred maintenance type savings.
Well, it's also the stuff that, it's the low hanging fruit. It's stuff that we can get to quickly.
Good.
Great.
Thank you.
Next, just a note, 175,
Yep.
that's just a correction of an account number that's been wrong for years.
That's a big correction.
Yeah, it's just making sure things are correct. Page 89. Contingency.
Ooh, talk to me.
The document, the budget document says show the current budget. So we show the current budget as of June 30th, and correlate it back to the first 6 months expenditures. The original contingency in 2019 for the general fund was $953,205. So it's an increase of $11,000.
I'm sorry, yeah,
We're on page 89,
thank you.
contingencies, sorry. 1 second. You're doing great. How many hours sleep last night?
I slept last night, that's, you know.
Ah. Ready? Go for it. And she goes,
Don't do that.
you go ahead, Andy.
So the current budget of 776 was as of June 30th. The original budget was 953,000, so it's an increase of $11,000.
Oh, so it's not.
And that's not the original budget.
Okay.
It's,
Okay,
how it's
totally, because
right,
I honestly didn't recall contingencies being that low, so where's the rest of it?
we transferred money out in just about every month this year.
Okay,
So
All
that
right,
was
so
what
it's
it was
in
as of June
other
30th.
accounts.
It's in other accounts.
I got it. See, that's very confusing. Here. Okay,
And then we'll keep looking forward to page
so what was last year, sorry,
953,
or this year's?
964.
Yep,
953 in 2019, 964 in 2020.
very good, very good.
How is that calculated?
It's an OSC formula, pretty much.
Okay. Keep going, you're good.
Page 28, Comptroller's Office.
Page
28.
28.
So are you still deputy and not acting? Is that your choice?
I'm fine where I
I'm
am.
sure the mayor would be willing to promote you.
I'm fine right where I am.
He loses union status.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be
I
exempt.
figured
I
that.
don't want to
You
be
could
accepted.
Listen, you could
He
always
doesn't wanna
call
make any
back.
more money, the baby's got
You
plenty.
could always call back.
After that.
Go for it, Andy.
All right, 13, 15, my office, the changes in permanent salaries. It's all contractual,
Every one,
every one of them.
Everyone, are you
44,000
kidding me?
an hour.
Ooh, Andy.
What's the
Seriously.
salary savings?
So you're gonna see salary savings in every department.
I mean, who?
It's every employee.
Yeah.
So we, and
So
I
it
give
is-
Selena a ton of credit for sitting with me and doing this. We went, so CSEA's raise is effective
Right.
March 1st. We went through every CSEA employee and calculated what their salary will be for January and February, and what their raise, and after the raise, what their salary will be.
So the budget amount is after the raise, but the salary savings drops back down to
Correct.
They worked hard.
impressive.
You know what though? There should be a program to just punch those numbers in. There's not.
There's
Get some
Excel, and
new
there's a
accounting
manual formula to do it.
There should be.
There should
There
be,
should be.
but it is also inclusive of, for example, if CSEA has a step increase in June, we calculated that as well.
Fair enough. Anything else in your domain?
We kept pretty much everything else the same.
Are you guys using any of the training dollars or?
We would like to go to the one, so, one employee in our office went to OSC training this year.
Purchasing, right?
No, it was, that was last year.
Okay.
This year, another employee went to OSC training. Someone went to NICOM. I was out while NICOM occurred. The goal is to go to GFOA in February, I think it's in February or March. We would like to go to that. That's the
It's
best,
important.
that's the single best training that there is for deputy comptrollers and comptrollers, those titles. So that's the goal this year, is for Selena and I to go to that.
Okay.
Consultant services, that's for primarily the firm that does the health insurance valuation, actuarial analysis that's required as part of the AUD audit. That's for that.
When does Benetech's contract expire?
Benetech's contract is up for renewal this year. We're looking at renewing with them, just given the time, being middle of October, there's not enough time to put it out They provide, for the most part, good services. So we'll go out for RFP for them again next year. We'll also be back out, Bonadio, last year is next year, so RFP for them should be going out later half of 2020, so that there's an auditor ready to walk in 2021.
Okay.
There's not any other questions?
We can-
Page 36, Treasurer's Office. All changes for salaries there are contractual. Kept everything else pretty much the same. Right size some accounts which involve decreasing them to 300 and 400, but otherwise everything status quo.
Andy, are we looking to get more things online to pay for our constituents and taxpayers?
Pretty much everything right now is through the web payment portal. All bills our office sends out, or our office sends out, is available online, parking tickets are online. The ease of the website, we hear varied things, but everything is available online.
It's better than it used to be.
It is, and I think it certainly helps with collections.
Right.
We've seen property tax collections improve, I think in large part due to online availability.
Two things that.
Councilman.
We'll talk about it later.
Yeah,
I think that's good.
so in the Bureau of Cash Receipts, the parking ticket billing, it was 26.5 on page 36.
That's in
Is that-
A3310 now. They're their own department. All parking is in its own department.
Okay,
Or 3320, it's one of the two. We made that change in 2019, I believe.
I think, I kind of recall that. Any other questions?
That's just also an effort to streamline so that we know the actual cost of all the parking for the city itself, so that we can better look at pricing, look at all of those kind of things.
And I noticed the parking lots went up. Is that based on?
So so a lot of that is just utilization. We've been able to actually churn through our wait lists and those kinds of stuff. We did open up some of the parking lots themselves. Congress Street parking lot because some of the lots were closed out, we weren't upselling.
Right.
We were upselling our own assets, so we started upselling, like Congress Street didn't have any, behind Mannery's didn't have any parking tickets utilized there, or parking permits, and now it's full. So we started upselling a lot of those things as well too, so. And we did open up some of the parking, because the utilization rates were consistently really high or low. So like the State Street garage and the Fifth Avenue garage, we actually opened up some more parking in there as well to allow us a bigger percentage to oversell.
Answer my question. Anyone else? Okay, Andy?
Page 40, contracts and procurement. Increases are all contractual. Well, is contractual. I'm just gonna keep saying.
I noticed, where was it? If we do the. Okay, all right, yep, I circled that one, so that is contractual.
Yes.
Nancy, I did notice that training, in contracts and procurement, you're actually recommending bringing down a grant.
It aligns with the training cost of easing.
Okay.
We had made it higher originally because the employee was new to the position.
Yep.
Just trying to align experience, not to discount training, but experience and actual cost.
And working out good. Yeah. Anyone have any questions? Okay.
Page 55. We're almost done.
Doing, Colleen. I
Fair
know.
word.
Two more.
I can
At least
see
for
you in
me.
the corner of my eye.
Let's go.
Okay.
You're in, right?
Yes, personnel and civil service.
There's one note I need to make on here. Account 409 says employee recognition. It should not say employee recognition. It should say consultant services.
So will you be amending that?
Yes, I will.
Um,
So the consultant services for that, to give everyone a preview of next Thursday, there is a contract that will be on the agenda for civil
Yes.
service software that will make personnel's office a lot easier. They will be moving, for example, roster cards out of Excel and into a computer, a program itself. The $7,000 is the maintenance fee of the program.
I haven't looked at the legislation and everybody will be getting it tomorrow in your packet. So I take it an RFP went out.
It is piggybacked, I believe. Still,
With the county or?
Somebody has it.
someone has it, I can't remember who.
We originally looked at piggybacking off of the county, but it would literally piggybacking off of the county, like utilizing their system. But that program doesn't allow that kind of use of the system. But we can piggyback off of the procurement aspects of it, and it's very similar. So especially because of the fact that we work with the school district as well too, and also Troy Housing Authority.
Do they reimburse us at all for like the proctors and folks like, any technical support that we
We have an
provide?
agreement with them.
The county pays the city for tax collection. I can't remember the percentage off the top of my head. The school district pays the city for civil service.
Okay.
That's how it works.
THA, nothing? No?
Otherwise, in personnel, the office equipment reduction, that was the money for the software itself purchased. And so it's one time in 2019,
Oh, yeah.
and then again, the salary increases are contractual. And the last one, unless if anyone has questions on personnel,
Does anyone have any questions? Okay.
page 122.
Right, do you have a question first?
You did?
Yeah, come late.
Pronouns.
That's payroll.
That's not personal. Yeah. Speaking of that though.
I'll talk
This
about that
will-
all night long. So has anybody had
Try
any
to condense
contact
it
with
down
the
a little
county?
Just get lost in it.
No, okay. Actually, no, I root for, yes, it's awesome. No, I'm a Pirates fan. I'm a Pirates fan.
Yeah,
Trying to
definitely
cheer.
not.
Good, I can let that go.
Not a Boston.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah, you're Steelers. Pirates.
Total Pittsburgh.
I was trying to.
Anyway, so the Kronos program, yes, we do. So one of the things that we've been working through as we've been doing the union contracts and stuff is the timekeeping system, making sure that we have all of that in place as well as we move to that. As you know, the shared services component that we were working on with the previous county executive, we're still in conversations. We haven't had conversations as of late, probably since just before Kate Better left.
in regards to partnering with the county on the Kronos program as well as the county system program. When we were talking to Waterville Beat for shared services, Jeremy has left. Jeremy is now at CDTA. So we're still in this kind of holding pattern. It's unfortunate because we had a really good start with a lot of shared services with the county. We just haven't been able to jumpstart that. And a lot of that is through the county's ability to take an assessment of their BIS department and some of their services. And we completely understand that, but it is something that we do have sitting out there. I think at some point in time, we're gonna have to pull the trigger on both of those and either fight it and do it and move forward, or be able to see if we can become a hub and then have people share up to us. We've had some of those conversations where we become the hub and then smaller actually share up to us. So we're having conversations around other departments as well with that, and especially as natural attrition through retirements and stuff like that in other municipalities happen.
So this civil service, what we're doing next week, the new program, that will kind of supplement for now some of the FRP requirements, correct, or no?
No, because it's already existing.
All right.
They don't count what's already existing. We've tried.
Yeah.
We tried because we do, I mean, the city does with, Brunswick or
Right.
with the county or with our other partners, whether it's for housing or the school districts, we do a tremendous amount of shared services already. The challenge becomes how do you, the governor's office is pushing it further, like how do you continue doing that on a bigger basis? And that's, everybody's got capacity issues, and then you also have political lines as well too. So it becomes, it's a reality, and it's a challenge, and it's something you have to figure out how to work around.
Council, comments? Did you have a question?
No, you don't.
Personnel wise, and I know it's under technology, but they rarely meet. Have we
Never.
have we filled Warren's position?
So we have gotten interviews. We are scheduling interviews. We received 6 applications, 4 of which were qualified, or we requested information from some and they didn't respond.
Okay.
So we're scheduling interviews. Actually put together a team of people to help me interview for that position, as well as a staff member in-house. So we're scheduling those to move forward. We are also in conversation with a local Troy-based consulting firm to kind of come in and do an assessment of the department as is, just to kind of see where we're at, where we need to move forward. It's not to replace the department, it's not to third party it, but just to kind of take a look at where we are. The big thing we have right now is with, with Warren leaving, obviously we need a network manager. We know we need that. But also we have one retirement that happened already this year, because Hanson retired. We also will have one coming up potentially in 2020. So it gives us a very rare opportunity to be able to redefine positions, really take a good look at what we're doing currently, staff capacities. Do we need to expand the department? Do we need to retitle differently? Do we need to give different job descriptions to different people or different duties? So it's a good opportunity. It's hard, you know what I mean? It's change, and I realize that. We've seen it with all the departments that we've had to kind of go through this with. But again, it's not to replace people, it's how do we supplement what they already do, and how do we succession plan so that we can make sure that we're going in the right direction. One of the other pieces that we're asking them to do is build us an internship program, as well as look at a capital plan for investing purposes. This is the analysis. Is it better to have hard infrastructure inside City Hall? Is it better to go on cloud-based? A lot of those things. Taking us to Google Docs, which I know a lot of people love Google Docs. There's a government-based program. There's always been this little bit of a weird factor because, a lot of the government sector might not be as technology savvy as some others, you know what I mean? So it's an unknown, and that's a challenge sometimes. So those kinds of things. So we're looking forward to it.
Technology.
We're gonna hopefully engage them now so that we can kind of get a jump start on it. Look to just do some minimal investigation, actually bring somebody in. They actually want to go out with code. They want to kind of take a ride. They want to go visit all the police, the fire departments, and all those places that have a disconnected service to us. Some are tied to us, some are not. So it's a good opportunity to kind of take a general staff of where we are and how we can go forward.
Are we paying them or?
We will be, yes, we will. And it'll be one of the things that we'll do now. And then once we get to a certain point, we can develop a firm scope of work, then we'll most likely go out to RFP for 2020.
Okay. Yep, good. Andy, anyone have any further questions on, any of those departments? We'll move to vital statistics.
Good.
Vital statistics, again, for the last time tonight, the increases in contractual and permanent salaries. The only thing of note, reviewing the budget, there's a $7,000 increase in records management. That is to maintain these historical files.
Did we ever find those missing files? That's horrible. Who destroyed that?
There was a miscommunication, I guess, between the prior city clerk and whoever manages the boxes at the firehouse.
At the firehouse.
There was like a miscommunication between them.
How long was that?
I don't know, I just never got to this one.
A long time.
Yeah.
Before anybody here.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
No, before anybody here.
I was
was
in grade school.
No,
It was a
no,
while
there's,
ago.
Andy-
That straight.
no, yes, for the record,
That was-
way before us.
Yeah.
Andy,
Yeah,
aren't
just
there,
let Jimmy
aren't there
run.
grants, for records management? May I see them if I go out?
That I don't know.
Okay,
Grants.
I could have sworn that there's some grants in
There-
Department of Ed or
No,
somewhere.
your state archives, that's
Yeah.
still gonna be applying.
Okay, good,
Yeah, we'll
good,
work it
awesome, thank you, Mara. You're on it, okay. Andy?
That's really it for vital statistics, unless anyone has any questions.
Yeah, I think prior, did Vital ask for the part-timer? I could have sworn, I know Sharon did, I thought Vital might have, no?
Not in the not that I recall in the last few years.
Okay,
We had to do it part-time at one point in time when, she was.
maternity leave, thank you, yep, I knew something, all right, cool. Anyone have any questions, all right?
Yeah, those-
Yes,
Are
Councilor.
the title salaries in the registrar based on like longevity in the title? Or
They're CSCA positions, so they have steps of based on years of experience.
They also have grade levels, right?
They're grades and steps.
Grade checks.
And longevity.
Ambulance.
well, so
Yeah,
And you know,
I
one
wish I'd had more years.
you got a lot of years.
Yeah.
You don't get longevity.
South.
Yeah, term longevity.
Okay, moving along, it's us. So, let's jump to the Andy, I think you answered for now, the ones covering us. Very quick, sorry, borrowing. Are we, the state comptroller, obviously, with the equipment and,
So, when
and then
we,
7.9, is that projected for 2020?
that's projected
Is
for
it-
2020.
Okay, what I'm talking about, guys, on channel 10, oh my gosh, I'm thinking baseball. On number 10, my question was, if you look in the capital general fund plan, there's $7.9 million for borrowing equipment, facilities, things, et cetera. And, the comptroller raised this, I just.
I'm sure it'll be written.
Raised.
Again, I do think while they write that in the budget letter,
Yeah.
it's also any bans or serial bonds, the state comptroller's office, as part of the MAC, signs off on that debt.
Yeah,
So they may write it once,
I know.
and then they turn around and they say it's okay.
Well, it's like the water fund. If you recall, 4 years ago, I mentioned that, but anyway, okay, not to get in the weeds.
Good.
But, Andy, just obviously keep it in mind, I mean, we don't want them to be scolding us again, you know. Now, in the 7.9 for the facilities, Mayor, will that maybe be a firehouse, study or no?
We did not put the firehouse.
Okay, so nothing yet?
No, we're working for that.
Okay, all right, keep us posted, all right, thank you. All right, I will jump now to Mara. Mara, why don't you go first? Do you mind? Please.
Get a microphone.
And Laura, you are on page 48.
I couldn't remember if I had sent the council our projected revenue for
No, and I was going to ask you, licenses, I saw slightly went up.
Yeah, so
Yep.
I printed
Thank you. Oh, that's awesome.
this is what I had sent to Andy, but I realized I didn't CC you guys on this, so.
Thank you.
Andy, thank you. Did we miss anything? I don't think so. It's so well.
There's a couple more here.
Just for a couple.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you can't say that we're not being transparent.
No.
So just very quickly, I just wanted to mention among other things, I've been recategorizing things in our software system so that we're able to pull things out more clearly and track them. And so you'll see, for example, at the very bottom, miscellaneous is projected to be 0. In the future, I don't anticipate categorizing anything as miscellaneous, and now have created line items for everything so we can track income better. This projection was made before we changed the beat permit after Carlo and Eric from Code had weighed in. So actually the revenue I expect to go up by an additional $10,000 because the beat permits are going up that much more. So I think everything on here is pretty clear. I don't know if you want to take a quick look at it and just let me know. The big increases are coming because of the changes in the electrical and the plumbing licenses. And I think everything else is pretty self-explanatory.
Yes, Council.
What is the 500 from the farmer's market that's anticipated this year?
The farmer's market pays special permit fee for their permit, and previously that had been categorized just as miscellaneous. So that would be one of those items that I'm now tracking on its own, so that if that amount changes in the future, we would, we'd be
Okay.
able to.
Mara, I love this, how you broke it out and put the legend underneath. This is extremely
This is
helpful.
excellent, yeah.
The New York State driver's license requirements.
If you are a woman who changed her name by marriage,
Yeah.
please be advised that you will need your official certified marriage license in order to get your enhanced driver's license when you go to do that.
Can you get mine ready for me, please?
I know. So,
my
if you changed your name for any reason, you'll need any piece of paper, official copy of any piece of paper that indicates how or why you changed your name since birth.
Real.
So if you had a legal name change, if you changed it by marriage, if you changed it by divorce, etc. And the New York State, the Motor Vehicles Department, it's not clear from the information.
Is
So
it just women?
I mean, the overwhelming majority of people who are changing their names are women by marriage, yeah. So we have been getting a lot of business, so that's why that is going up. It's a huge hassle for people, and especially because the little information card that they put out does not say that, so
Right.
people go and they wait in line for a very long time, and then they are told they have to come see us. It's $10. Please bring a copy of your ID.
Your old one.
It's right here, and I have the $10.
Now, Mara, do you, the dog licenses, very pleased, they're going up. Do you have any, projection or proposed recommendations for next year for different outreach? I know you've been
I mean,
on
we don't
social
really
media.
have a budget. We don't have an advertising budget, so we're doing the best that we can as far as social media.
Yeah.
We are reaching out to kind of pet stores and vets and stuff and see if they'll kind of put up posters and flyers and encourage people. But since we don't have an advertising budget, there's really not much we can do as far as outreach goes. But they are up. I mean, the efforts we have made, and I think especially because of the hearings last year, the legislation last year on the dogs, it got into the newspaper a lot more, and so that made a lot more people aware. It's really just a matter of lack of knowledge that people don't know that they're supposed to license their dog.
Maybe we could, with some of the bills, you know.
You could have a
we
fake
put
fight
in-
over it. and they're all-
Well, I was actually, if you recall, there was, before you guys came in, there was a proposal, I forget from who, that wanted to limit how many dogs and cats could be in a household. Oh, the uproar
Propose
was
that. I'll debate.
unbelievable.
And then make sure to work into the debate that you have to
It was
license
not
your
me.
dog.
No, we put it in,
Remember that? Do you remember that?
There is a limit. and
There is.
yeah.
Yes, but this
Depending on the
was
size of your house.
bringing it down, remember? There,
because there's a lot of people who have a lot of animals. I mean,
Way
look at
too
the
many
hoarder
animals.
house.
the hoarder
Campbell
house
Avenue was a
is,
prime example.
yes. Yeah. So,
Great.
Laura, anything else?
So
Council member.
I mean, as far as revenue, that's it. I have things to say
He
on
just
public
does not
safety.
recognize me, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Council
so you're adding to your projected revenue. How does that work at this point from a budget standpoint?
As far as where
We
that
don't,
money
we don't directly
comes.
control the revenue side of the budget.
I'm not sure I understand your
Or
question.
not, this is budget for India.
They're included.
Oh.
They're included.
Right, but it sounds like there's now an additional 10,000.
No, he already added that in.
He already added
Yeah, he's already got that under, he already added that into. So on his
Great.
chart,
So
if you look at
his
his
chart
chart,
has,
it includes it.
Exactly.
This one is the one I had sent in before we made that change.
great.
So mine does not include that. This is at the very beginning.
At the
Oh,
beginning,
okay.
but revenues, yeah.
I just, mine are broke because, these are just my
Right.
accounts, not everybody's.
No,
which is
It's
at
an
the beginning.
in-house,
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
Thank you.
just to let you know, this was prepared before, right? So,
yes.
as
The
far.
one we didn't see.
It occurred to me this morning, good thing I remembered.
No,
Anyway,
thank you.
so the proposed budget that Anasha put forward, he had proposed a 3% raise for the city clerk. I will mention that the city clerk position has not had a salary increase since 2009. I want to make a strong plea for increasing the salary of this position regardless of who is in it, whether I am here or not. I think if you want to keep getting professionals to do this job and to do it well, you need to bump up that salary. I took a look at the inflation charts from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and in the year 2000, this position was paid $34,636. That would be, or excuse me, that's the deputy clerk. I'm looking at this wrong. The city clerk position was $40,223 in 2000. That would be the equivalent of $59,979 in today's money. The current salary of $54,846 is the equivalent of $36,000 in $2,000. So it's actually, because of inflation, had a decrease in the value of this position. And I just think it's very problematic going forward. I just think you really need to, when you look at what the other salaries are of other department heads and other key professionals working for the city, I mean, I understand we're all underpaid and I don't dispute that at all. But when you look at the chart of department heads, you will see that the city clerk lags far behind the other departments. And I just think it's really problematic, especially going forward, if you want to continue to hire people, you know, with professional skills who could really do this job to the degree that it needs to be done, then I really think you need to increase the salary for this position. And I would say also for the deputy clerk as well. You know, although the deputy clerk is part of the union and does get,
Right.
you know, at least
She gets
occasional cost of living raises. So,
Now, Laura,
yes.
in here, there's the proposed, it's not in here. I
Noticed
thought that you were going to put it in,
I did.
okay.
The other thing
Somebody figured it out.
Yeah, so, and the other thing I wanna mention, the proposal that Anasha made.
What was it, Inez?
His proposal for the city clerk position was a 3% raise, so it would have brought it up to 56,491, 492. Rounding up.
492, okay. Okay, thank you.
The other proposal that Anasha made, which I think is a very good one, which also did not get into the recommended budget, was the proposal for up to 1 month's salary as a transition salary for an overlap, so that if another clerk is to follow me, that we could overlap each other by a month so that there could be training, right? And for the deputy clerk as well. I also think that is a really good idea. It was very problematic starting this job with only a few hours of sitting in Patty's office. There was no written manual, which we have since done. We have, our manual is currently up to 44 pages, we're adding to it all the time. So certainly incoming staff to our office will have a much better start than we had. But I do think it would be great if there could be some kind of overlap, just especially because of the complexity of our office, the number of different things that we do, the different laws that we have to, state and local laws that we have to concern ourselves with. It's a lot of information and a lot of training that I think would really benefit this office if there was more attention paid to that, instead of this idea that there's just kind of in the middle of the meeting, the other clerk gets up and leaves and the new clerk sits down.
It's very awkward,
It's just
it's
not a
very
good system.
difficult, I totally agree. But what's odd though, I see in the permanent salaries, 122E, but then I see a $7,000 increase, 129,266. But I don't, am I missing something?
Where, I don't see where you are.
If you look at the current budget, 122,813, and then you look at the recommended, 129,266. But it does come out to be 129,266 with just a modest increase for the assistant and the deputy. Do you get what I'm saying? And am I just looking at too many numbers?
We only budgeted 7 months of the assistant.
So I think.
There you go, okay, that's what it was.
Right, we
No, you're right.
budgeted 7 months
Yeah,
of the assistant.
Oh, the assistant, that's correct, okay, I get it, yep, very
Right,
good.
right. Yeah, he started.
Nice
with March.
job, all right.
So the assistant city clerk and the deputy city clerk had a raise this year?
Yep, through their contract, or through their union, yep, okay. Are any other exempts getting raises? No, except for you. Okay, right?
You just did the mayor's budget.
I Okay.
Well, and I just want to reiterate, I'm not making this plea for myself
No,
individually.
No,
I'm saying
it's
for this
very,
job.
listen, we
It's-
will
it needs to go up.
discuss it with our
Yours does as well.
Yes.
Yours does.
Laura, not to put you in a position, we'll discuss it at another time.
Sure.
And don't forget, I'm in the minority, so if they decide.
Yeah, I just want to put it out there. Otherwise, I think everything else is mostly staying the same.
Yes.
The one other difference is Humane Society's line, for reasons that I'm not quite clear on, that had been budgeted. I think what had happened was, at some point when that contract increased, the line item itself had never been increased. And so it was always a couple $1,000, at least over the past couple of years, has been like a couple $1,000s under, and has just been had budget transfers to deal with that. So we just bumped that up to 69,000. That's to cover both the Mohawk Hudson contract of 66,150, and then miscellaneous vet bills that end up averaging about 2,500. I did talk to the president of Mohawk Hudson Humane Society. Their budget won't be final until January, but he is recommending that they do not increase our contract, because he said since we did lower the redemption fees, he's making an argument to their board, we did the right thing, and therefore they should not be increasing our contract next year, that he wants to keep it at the same rate. So he said he couldn't make any promises, but that's what the recommendation is that he's making going in. He'll be able to let us know for sure in January, whether they're gonna have taxes.
What's that?
And they got all those.
Yes.
He'll do that.
That's
So otherwise, I think everything else is self-explanatory there, okay?
Yep, Laura, anything major on the horizon? I mean, obviously, you've really done a lot
thus
So
far?
our domestic partnership
Yes.
legislation hopefully will pass. I now have 2 couples who are waiting. As soon as I hear that the mayor has hopefully signed this legislation,
Awesome.
I have one couple that wants to be number 1, one couple wants to be number 2.
That's awesome. That is
They're gonna be
awesome.
domestic partners. They're not gonna be related.
That is
Um,
awesome.
So, I mean, people do
so
want this,
cool.
I'm excited to be able to offer this to them. The other thing is, I just to follow up on what you were talking about earlier, we are working on a grant. Rachel's drafting, doing kind of the initial draft right now. We're working on a grant from New York State Archives. They have $75,000 grants. We need to transcribe years of VHS and audio tapes. And part of those transcriptions will cover these years that we're missing. And so I don't know how helpful those transcriptions will be, because who knows? I'm not sure all meetings are as thoughtful and erudite as yours are. But they will be some kind of record, at least will give us a voting record on the different legislation that's been brought up. So we'll be transcribing those, and that way they'll be searchable PDFs instead of just
Oh, that's
convert, we
great.
don't want to convert them to more audio. I want to transcribe them so that they can be searchable PDFs, and that way people could do keyword
That's
searches
awesome.
instead of having to listen to 4 hours of a
That
meeting,
is
right?
so cool.
So we're applying for that, and then the other portion of that, we have, there was a previous grant to scan a lot of our marriage records, and for reasons that are not quite clear to us, some of the years were skipped. So I don't know if it was a problem with the technology at the time or something, but we're gonna be applying for the rest of that money to go towards digitizing more of those marriage records so that they're more useful, more accessible for genealogy and older marriage certificates and things like that. So we can protect the kind of older records.
Now, Maura, do you get a lot of folks looking for genealogy? I
Yeah.
would imagine.
Oh, for
so.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you get a lot of leads in the record?
Councilman.
What? Leaks in the record? Yes. Indeed, we do.
Have we had any active service folks come?
Had one.
Oh, you're kidding. So you wait.
Yeah, oh yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you didn't tell me.
And he didn't know that he had that. I mean, it just, we have a thing on there that says active duty, and then we told him, like, oh, they made the fee.
That is awesome. When was it?
Yeah. I think like 2 weeks.
That's cool. Nice. Good. All right. Okay, anything else? We're good? All right. City council, 2 big things. There is a $10,000 raise for council district 1 only.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
Neighborhood improvement.
It's a lot of money only
The NIP program
Yes.
remains the same, I believe,
Actually, it was 20, but
but it was
we had
because of
gotten
the
that.
CRC.
Right, CRC,
So we'll.
Hopefully they'll do that again.
Yeah.
which the Spearhead was able to get us last year, and I thank you for that.
Maura, is there anything that you see in our budget that we're not spending or that we could move? I know we've looked at a couple lines, but I think all in all, we're pretty up to snuff.
Do we need consultant service?
Yeah, that's our auditor. It comes out of ours. That's a fun idea. Okay. I think we're good. All right. And then lastly, our auditor, who I must tell you is awesome. He really is. I would love to have him full-time, and he
Sounds like
is. No, he's
I
retired.
know.
He'll never
Yeah, I'll
come
bring
full.
up again that council president.
Yes.
That we really do need an assistant in that office. I really believe that is the case. Yeah, I truly believe based on discussions with our auditor that the city as a whole would benefit greatly from having an assistant staff member in that office. However, to realize that, I tried discussing with personnel, didn't go very far, but I do believe that should be reconsidered.
Duly noted, and we should talk about that as the hearings progress. And
Yeah, I sat, because I didn't really know what the auditor did, and I did sit in the office, for 3 months, and, we took a full-time, and, you know, we broke it down to part-time, so it's come a long way, but I would definitely talk to you about that. I think it's a good idea. So no change there. I do see, wait a minute, $36, no, a $47 increase.
Is that it?
What is that? Is that, because he's part-time, is he in the union? Monica?
He is, that position is a union
Okay.
position.
All right.
So it might have been an adjustment of the hourly rate.
I
And to be
wonder,
fair, he
he
doesn't
might
take
not, I was just gonna say, he might not be able to take that,
But as of now, he can only take 15 until the state
Right.
changes anything.
right? And there are a couple of
I thought it
bills.
was 30,000 for the state.
It's 31, I think, yeah,
Chair.
31. Yeah, council member.
Councilman Kennedy brought up a good point last week. He sent an email over to Mara, and I've since talked to Councilman Cummings about straightening out this microphone system. It's embarrassing when I have to keep wiggling this back and forth between two councilmen.
Well, look at our tables.
And we don't get a cable, wait a minute, I know, plastic too. We don't get a cable, we don't get the piece we need to make this right, make this look whole, and I think that we should consider that. It's not that much money, but you know what? It sure makes a big difference. And as for the tables, we might talk to the gentleman who built the bar at the Fireman Union Hall. Did a great job. Maybe he could give us a price on putting together a nice council table so we respectively look as professional as possible
Well, the
instead
good
of our
news,
lifetime tables.
we have
The
the,
tables that'll be
we
Draping.
have the draping at least. I mean, it's,
Council President,
yes.
what was the first piece you were talking about, the cord?
The
Yeah,
sale.
just getting the
Yeah.
additional mics that we need to look right
It's
and be
embarrassing.
right. It
It's
is, this is just
So there are
shit.
there are two issues there, and both I think solvable. I think we do have more mics. There may be an ability to just put a splitter on some of these cables. We need to test that in order to have mics for everybody at least. Although I know there's also been criticism that these mics don't necessarily pick people up as well as those gooseneck type mics that are often used in this sort of setting. And so there could be some discussion about those mic types eventually. But at the very least, I think a splitter costs $10, so we should definitely work on that. No, I don't think we did anything over that.
So Chair, my question to Councilman Cummings is, we talk about the meeting, talk about going to fix, how do we get the results?
Right.
How do we do it fast?
Like,
How do we set up a time and who takes care of that Monday?
Feel free.
Come on, let's go. Give me a list. I got a relationship with the guys up in Drone Sound.
That's,
We got an account set up there, actually. Am I supposed to tell you that? But
How much money do we have left in this budget for the equipment and software?
how much do we have left in our budget for 2019?
I think
I would let you know.
Unused.
I mean, you just took out, it's
We
$600
can look
per
into
disorder
this.
for.
I could bring you a report in 2 seconds on PBS.
Certainly we can.
Somebody send me an email tomorrow morning and I'll email you back, let you know what's left.
Yeah, let's get to it, figure it out, and get it done.
Well, you have $700 for that audio thing that never.
So certainly have $20 for this display.
yes, we do.
What are you doing Monday?
I need a new chair.
Let's go. We all have to
Alright.
handle it.
All right,
Alright.
okay.
I am going to, ask, does anyone else, want to discuss anything? I do want to thank, the mayor, Andy, and Monica. You know, obviously it's a lot of time. You put a lot of time thus far into the budget. And now obviously moving forward, we're going to be spending hours and days and nights and weekends, I think. We will be spending time together and we will discuss some potential recommendations and things that maybe we want to see in it, but we want to thank you for all of your hard work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Wait, just,
Okay.
I'll second
did
that.
Jason have any questions? I think we.
Dave,
Sorry.
did you have any
He
questions?
sat through all that, so I wanted to make sure he had an opportunity if he wanted.
You're the member of our public here.
I'm not sure I understand. Serious.
I don't wanna keep anybody longer.
Oh,
You know, I didn't, maybe I missed it, but what percentage are my taxes going up?
3.4%.
Isn't there a 2-point cap?
Well, no, not technically. We should have asked this question for Andy. The
I can't
calculation of the,
believe I didn't.
the
Yes.
calculation of the tax cap is not a straightforward 2%.
Oh.
It's a complicated calculation that takes into account a number of factors. I think the tax cap for us this year was more in the range of 4.8%. But we did not choose to go that high.
And the
It
comptroller,
includes a tax overlay, there's a formula that they come up with, and then we verify with the state comptroller's office of what that actually is. So it is not technically 2%, so it's 2%, and it rolls over, it carries over from year to year. So if you don't utilize and you have that tax overlay, you carry it over to the other year.
Council President,
But Andy can give you the whole breakdown.
I think I've got some of that breakdown, if I may.
I didn't bring my notes. for
I got a couple notes
it's on
here.
your website.
So prior year tax levy minus the 2019 pilot plus the 2020 pilot times economic growth factor, which I figure that's an OSC number.
Yeah.
Rate of inflation plus prior carryover. So the carryover is that part, if we didn't reach the tax cap, that's the carryover. Includes prior year omitted taxes.
Yeah, Andy, went through it with me on the phone, but he was supposed to talk about it tonight. We will make sure at the next meeting, he goes through that more in depth.
Yeah, and just to say all that, I think we are under the, whatever that formula was.
We're still.
We're below that.
We have to be, otherwise there would need to be a fine.
Jason, we can hear you.
Right?
Okay, we're below that. That means Anasha, don't add any more.
Yeah,
Okay?
seriously.
Yeah.
It's very serious.
Yes.
So some things came up that I thought were interesting that maybe not directly budget related. So if the housing foreclosure stuff is delayed by 4 or 5 years or whatever before we get our hands on the properties, and then we lose money selling them in auction because of all the school taxes or whatever that we have to pay back. And we lost $900,000 in 2015 and then $400,000 in 2018. It feels like that's like time rolling from 2008 and 9, like when everybody was suffering. So we can expect that to keep happening. But I'm curious what percentage of our population just doesn't pay their property taxes? Do we have a percentage, like 20% of the population or 10% that we
It's
just
actually not
recommend
even that
count?
high. It's not really that high, but we can get you that.
Yeah,
We can get you.
Our collection rate each year runs around 96%.
Oh, okay.
So, and that's not population, that's dollar value, so of the amount we budget for tax appropriation.
You count on getting 96%
About
of
96%.
the money.
And that's an improvement over prior years.
Monica, can you, we'll get a number and we'll make sure you get that.
I was just curious,
Thank you.
it's interesting to me, like, the margin of error that people have to prepare for, like that. So do we have a system in place to catch people who are not paying, not catch them in terms of, I'm not interested? We're spending a lot of time worrying about the money that we're losing, when we auction off houses, and I'm wondering if there's a way to, nip the stuff in the bud in finding people who are having difficulty paying their property taxes, and notifying them or working with them like creditors do with, or health organizations when you have a procedure and you can't pay that. They'll take any money that they can get from you. And it seems like the city could operate in a similar way if we flag people and then like, just give us a little bit of money.
We do that.
But you do.
Yeah, we have an installment program, so we actually, so if somebody doesn't pay their bill, I'll try to talk loud for the audience too. So if somebody doesn't pay their bill, they actually get notices, you have an unpaid bill, please forward your payment, and then it'll come up, and then it'll get re-levied, so on your next tax payment, it'll be on that as well too. We'll get to a certain point where, and I don't know the date or like how many months go delinquent, but we'll actually send a notice that says, if you need to make arrangements for an installment plan for your taxes, P. Rosen in the treasurer's department, they give it, like literally give the information. that so they can come in, they have to make sure their current taxes are paid, but they can make an installment plan for their previous taxes. And we do that even through the foreclosure process, but we only allow you to do it once. We only allow you to do it once because we don't want to encourage bad behavior. Because we do have people who will go through and not pay their taxes for 3 years, and as soon as they get the foreclosure letter for us, mysteriously they come up with all the cash, and then they come in and pay their bills. That's why we sometimes have the reconveyances that you guys see. So we do, Jason, we do have that program. I know in recent years, we've been trying to be more aggressive with that to try to get people in so that we can get them on the installment plan. Some of the challenges too is if they fall behind in their current billing, it's automatically voided.
Mhm.
So we try to give people as much leeway as we possibly can without being taken advantage of ourselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I
And we send reminders.
figured there was some automated process of sending out
Yeah.
mail or email or something, but I wondered if there was a person who cared that
Absolutely.
could talk to people.
Absolutely. We deal with people all the time.
So did Andy not mention that there's like a 1.3 million bunch of money that is left over? Did I mistake that? That
It's
leftover
not
money or money that we
Money
saved from stuff? Like,
Right.
can we use that for the NIP program? Or for microphones, or so we don't have a 90s style party table?
What about a sidewalk grant program, 50/50?
For sidewalk grant.
Potholes, you seem to be very concerned about potholes.
We had any
Did-
cash.
The cash is the key.
When did dog licenses go up? I got a new puppy, I need to register.
They do go up. They went
Dog
up.
licenses, the cost
The licensing, yeah, is that like,
has
is it in
not
2020
gone up
budget?
in a million years. No, it's that we're
You're going
getting
to,
more
it's going to
dogs,
go up.
more dogs are being licensed.
There's more licenses.
Oh, you're not raising the fee.
No.
I thought you said you were raising the licensing fee.
No,
Good idea.
Dream of it.
let
Good.
Laura answer.
Sorry,
We would not dream of raising the fee for dog licensing. Councilmember December, who owns 3,
Yeah.
would not allow it. No, we don't. And it's actually, it's really settled for what it is.
It's not, it's
We're not raising the fees for the licenses, it's that we're getting more licensed.
I see, that's good. Have you
That's
thought
good.
about licensing cats? Do you have to license your cats?
You can't license your cat. You don't really own your cat.
Good.
They own you.
Laura, very good. Not yet.
Yes.
And just as a last
Yes, Jason.
random thing,
We're
if
getting
we're,
pushy. Go ahead.
if we're spending $7,000 on records management, and people need to get updated with Google Sheets and you have VHS tapes and stuff, you might want to update records management and use CDs or DVDs or something.
Yeah.
That's a joke. All right,
Good one.
that's what I mean. That would be nice. Once that made sense.
CD.
Thank you, and good night.
What up? Thank you, Jason.
I was gonna say, I guess my mom just has VHS.
That would be an upgrade.
So
We
what?
still have one.
Hey, I still have a VHS.
All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, I am going to take a motion to go Yankees.
1-0 Yankees.
Second, I'll do that.
Second inning, 1-0. No.
Make a motion to table that.
Okay. Do I have a second? All right, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Councilmember Paratore is opposed. Okay. Thank you. Good night.